position. Annie Power at the last race down. Annie Power has gone but in front of the last length. Melanie Light
Going the far side, they're running up towards the finish, and he's mistaken the winning post. He's mistaken the winning post completely, Roger Loughlin, and Hoyt
from Archibald. Hardy Eustace defends his title, but Archibald is flat out in second. Then he's followed down right by. He's beginning to come on. He's drifting off the true line. He hangs fire. How is West coming home? Swings a gun. Going to win his fourth Betfair Chase, and Cordo Star is still the king. Cordo Star wins.
Hello, and welcome to episode 17 of the Tailed Off podcast. You'll notice once again our exotic friend Matthew Connor is off on his travels. I'm starting to wonder his commitment levels to this podcast. So you just have Duncan and I today. But for those who are new to the podcast, this is a no holds barred deep dive into the wonderfully weird world of horse racing. We get stuck into all sorts of topics, and we have a few juicy things to get our teeth into today. We will have a bit of an update on Trains in Form. We haven't had a selection for a while, so there was one put out last night. We've got a bit more of an update on my own horse Call Out and how he's been progressing since his run at Windsor last week. Couple of news items to go through. There is a very topical stewards inquiry that I'm sure everyone who's been following racing has been talking about in detail and has their own opinion on. And then we've got a nice bit of preview for some races over the next few days. We're right in the middle of the York Dante meeting, and then we move on to the big race on Saturday, the first major open age group 1 of the season, the Lockinge. So without further ado, I'll say hello to my esteemed colleague Duncan Butters. How you doing?
All good, sir. All good. Yeah, it's a shame Matt's not here. 3 out of 4. There's got to be some kind of punishment in this for him now. This is just getting ludicrous. But yeah, no, it's nice to be here, and nice sunny weather outside for a change, which is good. Loving it.
Indeed. He is a bit of a part-timer at the moment, I have to say. I have to
sloppy boy.
Crack the whip, to use a horse racing pun. Right then, first item on the agenda for today is Trains in Form. I think a few people may have been wondering, are we still doing this anymore? But as we've said every week, I won't put up selections just for the sake of it. Although, to be honest, I feel like with this one that ran today, I might have been trying a bit too hard to find one because I was kind of conscious we'd gone past 2 weeks without a selection. But it's just been the case of there's been nothing that's really hit the criteria. And some weeks you get a few in a week, and other weeks I don't feel confident enough to put something up. So we have had a little bit of a barren spell. And actually, I think we said on the first episode where we covered Trainers in Form that I have about 40 tabs open on my Chrome browser on my phone of all the trainers I'm following at the moment, and then meticulously go through them every evening with the new results of the day and get rid of the shit ones and hopefully put some good ones back on there. But I'd actually got down to about 15 or 16 tabs recently, which kind of tells you that, I know,
well, mate.
Makes life a bit easier, but it just shows you that there was no one of the sort of sneaky criteria that was worth following. So yeah, it's just been a bit of a quiet spell for the Trains in Form, but it's a long season, so there will be others. I did chance good old Lemons de Souza today at Yarmouth because he had a 12-1 winner yesterday. Sadly, his horse, Gorilla Princess, was pretty awful, I'll be honest. Apologies, that's another 2 points backwards, but we are still in a pretty healthy position at 56.48 points up, pod to date. We did get into the heady heights of the 60s, but I think if you'd offered us this from January to mid-May to still be this many points in front, I think we'd have taken it. And the trajectory overall is positive. That's the main thing.
That's exactly it. And like I say, there'd be more to come.
Exactly. Keep the faith. I'm sure people haven't. And then when we post the 20-1 winner, they'll be like, oh.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Always the way. Well, you've got to keep following.
Exactly. Great. So that was Trains in Form. Well, I'll give you a quick update on Call Out. And if I can work out how to do the video, I will post a video for those watching on YouTube of his most recent piece of work, which was actually today, so hot off the press. He had a gallop up the racecourse at Newmarket, the Rowley Mile. So there's 2 racecourses at Newmarket, the other one being the July course. And they have gallops alongside the actual main racecourse bit. So it's quite cool to see him actually up there rather than the standard kind of Warren Hill gallops that he goes up. And interestingly, he's in the middle, if you're watching the video, and the horse on the far side is Battled By, who's one of Jack's better horses, and he's actually rated 82, so a full £22 better than we are. And Jack was saying in his voice note that he was so impressed that he was able to travel up alongside that horse, and if they were in a race and a handicap, the weight difference would be significant, and you'd think he would be further ahead of him. So that was quite pleasing to see. He's come out obviously really well from his race at Windsor. I think that's really got the fitness into him. And probably a little bit surprised we're already looking to run again next week. I did say last week I thought it'll be sod's law. He'll be ready to run when we're away in Italy in a couple of weeks. But it looks like Brighton next Wednesday. Nice little trip down to the coast, sunny Brighton. Could be on the go.
Matt will be happy.
Exactly. Bring the horse to Matt, seeing as he can't.
Cheeky bastard, I know. He doesn't turn up for 3 weeks. So what do? Give him a ticket to go to Brighton races and watch your horse run.
So fingers crossed. Next Wednesday at 6 o'clock at Brighton. Look out for call out.
Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed. Yeah. Look forward to seeing how he gets on.
Indeed. Well, I think Callum, the jockey, said he'll win a race. And the other point I should mention is that Jack worked his magic with a handicapper, and he managed to get dropped £2 for his last run, which I thought was quite generous, because first run for a new trainer, they tend to maybe take a conservative view that they're using that as a pipe opener. So we'll take all the pounds off we can get. So another £2 is only going to help him win next time, hopefully.
And can we say now on the pod that we're going to have a special guest next week?
I think it's worth teeing up, and then if he doesn't materialise, we'll have egg on our face, but it wouldn't be the first time. No
pressure.
So yeah, we've got a real special guest next week. We've managed to convince our trainer Jack Morland to come and join us, which is going to be absolutely brilliant. He'll give us a real insight in what it's like to train horses, to run a yard, his kind of journey through the game, and how he's got to where he has, owning his own business now, running an up and coming stable in Newmarket. So if you don't watch any other podcasts for the rest of however long we do this, make sure you watch next week, because it's going to be really good. Lucky to have him on, I think.
Yeah, looking forward to getting some insights actually from, obviously we've had Pete being not a trainer, but like obviously
owner breeder,
very much in the know with the owners and breeding and all that kind of stuff. But it'd be good to have a proper trainer on, very much up and coming trainer, and he's had his fair share of winners, so be good to see what he has to say.
Exactly, so look forward to that next week. Right then, let's move on to the news. One massive piece of news that dropped pretty much from, as far as I was concerned, out of nowhere this week. Over to you, Duncan Butters. What's happening?
Yeah, so pretty sad actually, I think, and quite a shock for any horse racing enthusiast out there. But we say goodbye to Rachel Blackmore. Absolutely gutting to hear. She announced her immediate retirement from jumps racing at the age of 35 after 16 years in the saddle, which is it's quite a shock. I don't know if you felt the same, Owen, in all honesty. I didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think where I was when I saw the news, and it just completely took me by surprise. Yeah. But when you sit down and think about it, she's had a great career. She's achieved probably everything she wanted to do. She's 35. She had a bad injury in the autumn where she had 3 months out of the saddle. So
she broke her neck or something, didn't she?
Yeah, it was a bad neck injury. So maybe she's just weighing everything up and thinking, do I want to carry on again next season? But I think a lot of the kind of bigger jockeys that have retired recently, like McCoy and Ruby Walsh and Davy Russell, etc., you've kind of got an inkling that that's coming, and you know you're going to see them for the last time, or they announce it on the racecourse or something like that, where there's a bit more of a fanfare. But she's just sort of stepped out the side door, if you like, and done it quietly. Which is
very much so. I mean, I'm sure she'll be lined up for something else, no doubt, like on the TV pundit, maybe on ITV or something like that. I'm sure, no doubt, before too long, with everything. But yeah, like you said, Elle, about she pretty much completed everything I can imagine that a jumps jockey would want to. Grand National winner with Manila Times. I know you obviously had a juicy little bet on that. And then Gold Cup winner with Aplutard, European Hurdle and Mares Hurdle winner with Honeysuckle, and the Champion Chase winner in Captain Guinness. And obviously the most recent one would have been Bob Ollinger, which was quite a surprise in the Stayers Hurdle. So she's had some serious victories over the course of that career. So yeah, gutted to see her go, but congratulations on an incredible career, Rachel Blackmore.
Absolutely. And as you say, she not only won the Grand National, but done the clean sweep of the championship races at Cheltenham, which only a handful of good jockeys have managed to put that on their CV. So she hasn't got much else to do. Fair play. Good luck to Rachel Blackmore and whatever she does next.
It'd be impressive, interesting to see actually. Though, just thinking about it, obviously, her being one of the main riders for Henry de Bromhead, who does he have an instant replacement for those rides? Do we think?
Yeah, I think is it Dara Keenan or something like that that he's got.
Yeah,
He does have a few other people, but I don't think there's anyone as like well known as Rachel. So big shoes to fill, big boots to fill, I should say.
Very much so.
Indeed. Right. Another bit of, well, probably not news, but just kind of in your face all the time if you're following horse racing at the moment is Aidan O'Brien absolutely sweeping all before him. We did speak after the Guineas that he, rarely for him, he sort of had a blank time of it, and Godolphin were actually, for a change, winning everything, winning both Guineas and winning the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks, and it sort of felt like a bit of a change into the guard back to Godolphin from when they used to rule the racing world in the 80s, before Coolmore and Ballydoyle just completely took over, and that was very short-lived because Aidan's back, and he's back with a bang, and he's... Okay, he hasn't won any, let's say, of the main races other than the French 2000 Guineas at the weekend. But when we've moved out of the Guinea season, we move into the kind of Derby and Oaks season for the 3-year-olds. We spoke about the Classic Generation a couple of weeks ago. There are loads of key trials for those big races, and he has won every single one of them. He won the 3 trials at Chester. He won the 2 trials at Lingfield. He then won 2 trials back in Ireland in his home country. And for good measure, he won the next trial, which was the Musidora at York Today, with Whirl, who won so impressively. And he's also got the favourite for the very next trial, which is the Dante tomorrow, which we'll talk about a bit later. So what can you say, Duncan? He's unstoppable.
Yeah, it's just, he's mad, isn't he? Just like he can just pick up these races, and it doesn't seem to matter if he's got the favourite or a second string or even a third string potentially. He'll pick them up and just carries him in his stride, really. It's like Willie Mullins, as we've said before, of the flat. Unbelievable. It's just knowing which one to be on and when. But yeah, incredible stuff. Can't go wrong with backing him, that's for sure.
And that's the thing, because it's like, if you've got let's say you've got a Guineas horse, or you've got a Derby or an Oaks horse, that's, for most stables, that's your one absolute diamond for the season. So then you're only going to run in one trial and then hopefully go for the big race. But he's got so many for all of the big races. He can mop up all of the trials with completely different horses along the way. So
yeah, you just don't know which one's going to
turn up
be
on a big
like
day.
Favourite for the next one. They just flip-flop in the market all the time. But like you say, well, when we move on to looking at the racing for the next few days, it'll be interesting to see what we've picked out and what they look like for the future. But yeah, unbelievable.
And to make that point, I had a look at the Derby and the Oaks betting, and he's got 5 of the top 7 in the Derby, and
Willie Mullins.
the Oaks, and 5 of the top 6 in the Derby betting. So pretty much. And I'll post a picture of the Racing Post Today front page, because it was basically a Monopoly board with all these horses on it, and that's what it feels like at the minute. He's got them all. He's got houses on every corner.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's mad, it's mental, but fair play to him. He knows what he's doing.
Exactly. Right then, Stewart's Inquiry, bing bong. Wonder what we're going to talk about this week for the old Stewart's Inquiry. Duncan Butters, take it away.
Well, I mean, as we kind of mentioned a little bit earlier on, the Stewards is it's a Stewards about a Stewards actually, from the French Guineas from the weekend. So Kieran Schumacher's got, I think he got pelters from us last week. He's had pelters from us over the course of some of these pods, I think, but he's in the spotlight. But it's not actually his fault, really. It's all about the stewards rather than poor Kieran. So he was aboard She's Perfect in the French Guineas at the weekend, and he won the race by a short head from Zaragana, who was ridden by Mikel Barcelona. And after the race had obviously finished, there was a stewards that was called for apparent interference against Barcelona's mount. And we'll probably post, hopefully. There's a head-on that you can see. I think Sky Sports News did an analysis of this, just a head-on, so you can see the horses coming down towards you, so you can really get an understanding of where the horses were moving, kind of left to right and things. But they claimed that there was interference between She's Perfect and Zaragana, and it stopped the horse from basically winning the race. So She's Perfect was then demoted from first to second place, and Zaragana was promoted into winning the race. And there's been a few bits going around on X from one of the owners from She's Perfect, and he was saying, I think in one of his latest ones, that when they went into the stewards, or what they found out from the stewards afterwards, was the only bit of evidence that they could find of interference was before the furlong pole. So there was nothing from the furlong through to the finish that they called out. It was literally happened before the furlong marker, when there was apparent interference. And the other piece that I think is absolutely baffling is that Mikel Barcelona actually dropped his whip after having whipped the horse twice. He dropped his whip and then proceeded to slap the horse, I think about 5 or 6 times round the neck. Just ridiculous. And they are somehow calling us stewards about that. And when you see the video itself, the horses don't even come together at any point. There's no touch at all, no touch. And yeah, I just find it absolutely baffling, the fact that they've managed to somehow turn this whole thing over. And I hope for Basher Watts, who's the owner, or one of the owners, I really hope that, because they've appealed the decision, I really hope that something is done about it, because it's embarrassing for the French, as far as I'm concerned, just to kind of turn over such a ridiculous result. And he's posted some videos, bless him, of his whole kind of reaction when he thought the horse had lost the race but then won the race, and they were all going mental, and then obviously to find out that they've been turned over in stewards must be absolutely gutting for him. So I really do feel for the guy. I don't know, Elv, what your opinions on the whole thing were. It just seems absolutely mental.
Yeah, I mean, you've covered it well. There's a lot going on there. I think at face value there was a lot of emotion and a lot of emotional reaction online, especially, where you could take the view quite easily that you've got French stewards, you've got a French favourite, very short price favourite that everybody would have backed, owned by kind of one of the biggest owners over there in France, the Aga Khan, a homebred filly who, you know, is very much one for the French, versus a kind of happy-go-lucky, quite outspoken social media promoter, Basher Watts, who started up a syndicate from nothing, and you know, it probably would be quite easy to instigate something against that sort of owner, versus if it was, you know, the Juddmonte team or the Shadwell team or the Godolphin team or the Coolmore team. And obviously you'd hope that any jurisdiction calls it down the line and they don't get influenced by any of that stuff. But on the face of it, it looks like David's beat Goliath, and then
Exactly
the referee's gone, nah, that
Yeah.
didn't happen. Actually,
No, I'm not having this.
Goliath won.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
suspended or something.
It just feels poignant, though, that with the fact that Barcelona's dropped his whip,
Yeah.
and then has gone for the slapping kind of thing, but they're calling the interference as the thing that's lost him the race.
Well, so when I've kind of looked back at it in the cold light of day, I think one point to make really clearly is that French racing rules and stewards and interference and all that stuff is notorious in itself, and certainly very different from Britain. Britain has moved slightly towards that kind of spectrum, if you like, where France are very meticulous on interference, to the point where they essentially, once the horses turn into the home straight, they kind of want them racing in straight lines, and they don't want any bumping along. Now, if you've ever watched a bloody horse race, they're animals, and when they get tired in the last few hundred yards inside the final furlong, they're gonna waver around a bit. And, you know, the jockeys are doing their best to keep them straight, but there will be comings together. Now, obviously, nobody wants to see one horse completely take another one out. That should be intervened. That should be punished. Yeah, exactly. Like we suffered at Windsor last week.
Yeah. Now that is interference.
So if you know the French rules and you look at what happened, one thing I would say is it was quite interesting that I don't think they were calling a steward's inquiry on their own back. Mikel Barcelona actually went in and objected to the ride by Kieran Schumacher on She's Perfect. So basically, he's the one that brought it to their attention. Then they reviewed it. Then they made their decision to disqualify the winner, which in itself is sneaky when you've done what you've done.
That's even worse.
But when you do look at the interference, okay, it was, as you say, a long way out. And actually, weirdly, it was She's Perfect, Kieran Schumacher, knocking into the horse in the middle, which was Ryan Moore on the Aidan O'Brien filly exactly, who then concertinaed into Regana on the far side on the right, and that bump did take her off her stride. There was a very diminishing short head as the final distance. Under the French rules, I can kind of see how they've come to that conclusion, which I know, in the cold light of day, because if you know the French rules, I have seen some crazy horses be thrown out when I've been like, there's nothing there, because we're so used to watching the British way, which is kind of first past the post is always in their favour. They have to do something pretty drastic and for quite a sustained period of time, bumping them along for them to turn it over. But I say it was a real 50-50 call, even in the French racing. But what makes it almost inexplicable is, as you kind of touched on, is when he's accidentally dropped his whip after two kind of hits of encouragement, he's then proceeded to slap the horse down the neck 12 times, which is...
Is it 12 times?
12
I thought it was
times.
I thought I had Basher Watts on his thing.
Yeah,
said
he
like
said
6.
that, but it's actually 12 times. So
12 times.
When you add on the 2 hits with the stick, that's like 14 taps of encouragement.
Which is over the limit.
Yeah, and basically the French rules are even more stricter than Britain. So Britain on the flat, I think you get 6 hits, and it's 1 more over jumps. Whereas on the flat, in France, it's only 4. And the limit for disqualification, so obviously you get punished if you go a few over. But if you go too far over, you get disqualified. And we do have that rule in Britain now. But that's 9. So really, if you add up the slaps with the hand, which how could you not? Because it's the same thing. In fact, it's worse, and it looks a lot worse. Then I do think they've got a case for
100%.
disqualification on that basis. And I'm fascinated. I don't know when the review is going to be concluded, but fascinated.
I'm not sure. I literally saw before we came on air that Basher Watts had done a post, and I thought, oh, here we go. But it wasn't about the steward's inquiry or the objection. It's actually the fact that they've entered the horse into the Arc at the end of the season. So he's entered now up into that, which is pretty awesome. Hopefully there's a nice thing for them to look forward to, obviously, as well, which is fantastic. I really, really hope that there is some kind of sense seen in this from all angles. I think it's ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous, the fact that this horse has been turned over. The only other thing I was going to bring up, which is not related to this, but it's actually an Aidan O'Brien type thing, which I actually brought up last weekend, was at the Lingfield Derby trial. Which was when Puppet Master won, which is the odds-on favourite for him, and Stay True, which was his kind of second string, with Richard Kingscote on board. I found that, and this was doing there was a lot of comments on ITV Racing about this. The fact that Stay True, I think only was given the whip about 3 times. And it almost seemed like Richard Kingscote just didn't want to win the race. He seemed to give it a very, very, very careful, last half furlong ride. They came together quite closely. I mean, if it had been France, they'd have both been thrown out or something, but who knows? But it just seemed very suspect to me, the fact that you've beaten by a short head, you've not even gone close to exceeding the whip rule, and a very, very kind of tame ride not to win the race. I mean, you can argue it either way, but personally, I just thought it was a little bit suspect. But
no, I'm so glad you brought this up, because I was absolutely flipping fuming when I saw that ride. I was raging because anyone who watched last week's pod, I tipped him. I then backed him on the day, even though he was the second string, because when I tipped him, we said that Aidan had the top 3 in the market. Which one's going to run? He ended up running the two of them at the top of the market, but Ryan Moore, being the stable jockey, obviously picked Puppet Master. He was the favourite, but I didn't fancy Puppet Master. I still fancy Stay True. The last Galileo colt that Aidan's got, we spoke about that. I thought he'd really appreciate the stamina test, and he got a pretty rough run round, so not a great ride, but it was Richard Kingscote's first ride for the owners and Aidan O'Brien. So clearly in the back of his head, he's thinking he wants to make a good impression. He kind of made a bit of a mess of the race. Ryan got the perfect draw up through the inside. But even despite that, he was coming there with a massive run on the outside. And I was raging, mate, because I was like, he has not asked that in the past. Because it's so stupid, because if you're a competitor, you're a jockey, you want to win races. And it's almost like his brain was telling him, or it'll look bad if I get the main one beaten, because what if they want to run that in the Derby and then, they want to make it a stallion, and if it gets beaten then it might look bad and all that stuff. And fair play to Ed Chamberlain on race and ITV Racing, because they get, I know
Massive
Tony
fair play.
Calvin gives them a lot of stick for not criticising jockeys, and to be honest, a lot of the racing media, the pundits are all ex-jockeys. They always look after their old friends in the weighing room. And it's
That's
just
what really annoyed me.
do they think we're stupid sat at home watching it, thinking, I think it was definitely Jason Weaver that was really defensive of Richard Kingscote, like so defensive. And I was like, you're blind, mate,
God.
because every punter
Massively.
who's backed that horse, including me, was going, you're mad, because he's definitely not asked for everything on that horse.
I totally agree with you. I think the fact that Ed Chamberlain brought it up, but like you said, Jason Weaver was absolutely like defending the man to the hills.
Yeah.
It's just like, I kind of get your point, but you're not seeing it from the other angle. He's only looking at it from one aspect. Like, look at it from the other side. And it looked, as soon as the race finished, I think I messaged into one of our group chats, and I said that looked quite a suspect ride on that. And I'm glad it was picked up. It wasn't just me that was, sucking lemons, as it were.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was just a very, very bad ride, I thought. But
Indeed.
there we
We
are.
move on. That's what we're here to do. We call out shit when we see it, and that was shit,
Exactly.
Richard Kingscote. Thank you very much. Right. Let's try and find some more winners instead, shall we? We'll do a few previews of the races. So as I said at the top, we are in the middle of York's Dante meeting. 3 days. We had the first day at the course today, which is Wednesday, if you're watching this a few days after. We're now going to preview a couple of races for tomorrow, Thursday, and then we'll move on, as I say, to the Lockinge on the Saturday. So first race we've got at York tomorrow is the Group 2 Middleton Filly Stakes for the older fillies. So these are 4-year-olds and above. And Duncan, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I think we look like we've aligned on this one. I was
Again.
really, really looking to try and get the favourite beaten in this, and See the Fire, who's currently 6-4. Watched her last run, or first run of this season, at Sandown. She finished 5th that day. I think she potentially was favourite for the race in the Group 3 there. And she just kind of seemed to peter out. Didn't finish that far down the field. I thought she was a lot further down the field, actually, in finishing than she was. I think it was about just over 2 lengths down over the last. But I can't see anything beating this horse. A bit of a pipe opener. Probably be a lot fitter now for having had that run. Will love the ground. Was second like last year to another Aidan O'Brien, classic Aidan O'Brien, an opera singer at the Nassau Stakes, which is the Group 1 at Goodwood last season. Clearly has the ability at higher levels than this in the Group 1s. If she can find any type of form like that, just wins. I think at 6-4. I think that's the one really. I don't really see much else that I liked in the race. I don't know what your thoughts were, Earl.
No, you've pretty much said word for word what I got written down here. Desperately looking to try and take the favourite on, especially when there's 8 runners. I always think, if you can get 3 places, I probably prefer to do an each way than back the favourites. But I just looked at everything else in the race, and I was really struggling, because she's joint top rated with Beautiful Love, but she was pretty tame at Newmarket last time out. Nikhil's won over a lot further in its first start of the season, and then Doha seems to want to stop the ground, and then you go down to the sort of the rags then, and I'm thinking, no, as you say, See the Fire, probably a tad disappointing on its reappearance at Sandown, but actually was only beaten a couple of lengths, and the form from last season, having won at York as well, I think course form definitely is helpful at York. So 6-4 is not a great price, but if that's your bag, get stuck in now, because she'll probably be even shorter come the race tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree.
Good stuff. Right, we'll move on to kind of the feature race of Thursday. We've been talking all about the Classic Generation recently, and the last real main trial for the Derby is the Dante Stakes. It's got a good record of throwing up Derby winners. So who do we like in this, Duncan?
Again, I really want to try and get the favourite beaten, but with everything we've literally just been discussing with Aidan O'Brien, he has the favourite in this, currently even money. The Lion in Winter, who's also favourite for the Derby at Epsom in June, currently 11-4. If he wins, the Dante tomorrow, I expect he's just going to shorten even further. I guess the slight niggle with this would be, but if you can have a niggle really, would be the fact that this is the first run back for this season after a 230 odd day break. And obviously, you'd think that the Derby is the main focus. So, will the horse be fully wound up? I doubt it. So it really depends on is the horse just good enough to win on the day. Even money is. It could be dodgy. I mean, whether or not there may be a super boost on tomorrow, but you could almost double it up with the last selection that we just had with Sea the Fire to make it a little bit more interesting. But that would be the main selection, and then the other one I had was a saver, which is you can have it each way. 11-2 was Alpine Trail, who won last time out in the listed contest 2 weeks ago at Newmarket. Potentially could be fitter now as a result of having had a couple of runs under the belt. Also has a Derby entry, currently 25-1 for the Derby. So that would probably be the each way play if you don't want to back the favourite.
Well, your each way saver is my main fancy in the race, actually. So thank you for hearing me up on that one. Yeah, I agree with what we've said before. Aidan O'Brien and Ballydoyle just taking all before them in these trial races. They've got another favourite in the line in winter. As you say, he's the Derby favourite. You'd think surely he just goes and wins this and kind of we move on to the next thing. But your kind of concerns are probably my little angle in here to try and take him on. We've actually got a decent field for a change in the Dante. It tends to be kind of a handful of runners. So there's actually plenty of competition against him. He won't get it all his own way in an 11-runner field. And as you say, he'd had a bit of a setback. He was meant to be the main Guineas horse for the season and missed that race at Newmarket and is only just reappearing here. And I've just got echoes of what was a horse of his that I backed in the Guineas and expanded. And then Aidan O'Brien said, oh no, he wasn't fully ready. We've got him for another day. Expanded, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Expanded,
So I can just already hear Aidan O'Brien having a mic shoved in front of him after this gets beaten and him coming out with all the excuses under the sun. So that's my hope and prayer. Now, obviously, he was an absolute top 2-year-old last year. He won the Acomb Stakes at York over 7 furlongs, beating the Guineas winner in ruling court. So, I mean, that form is rock solid. He's also bred to get the trip because he's by Sea the Stars. So, absolutely nothing wrong with him. The only angle I'm taking on is that he's missed his intended sort of target and he's probably a bit behind training-wise. And at even money, that's where you've got to look for little sneaky angles. So against him, Alpine Trail, who is fit and well. He didn't actually run at 2, which is a bit unusual for kind of classic horses. But he's making great progress this season as a 3-year-old. He won a couple of pretty ordinary novices at Wolverhampton and Yarmouth, but then really started to take the step up in class in his stride at Newmarket when he won a listed race over 10 furlongs pretty comfortably. It was only a 4-runner race, and it's hard to know what he beat in that day, but he's again bred for this trip, and he's already won over the distance, so no worries there, no worries on fitness. Charlie Appleby obviously flying, and I just thought 11-2, as you say, you can even do a sneaky each way bet at that price. I thought he's a much safer bet than going balls deep on the favourite, and we all know how that can work out.
Cherries everywhere.
Cherries everywhere. So, yeah, as I mentioned, is a good field. So there's 3 places. So I've also got a sneaky one each way. Damasus for John Gosden, currently 16-1. Had a first start of the season in the Classic Trial at Sandown over a mile. But that was at the end of April when John Gosden's horses were just needing the run a little bit. The yard weren't really firing. Obviously, since then, he's kind of hit top gear, which you'd expect at this time of the year. And I think he's just been priced on the fact that he was beaten in that race. So if you're prepared to draw a bit of a line through it, you're getting 16-1 about a horse that probably would be half that price. Maybe if you just come here first time out. So he's by Frankel, and I think he'll cope with the trip fine. And I think 16-1 is a little each way saver for Damius.
Nice, like it.
Indeed. Right, we've got a bit more York action before we head over to Newbury. So on Friday, the final day of the 3-day meeting at York, the feature race is one for the stayers. We've been talking a lot about speedy horses recently, but there are these cup races that run throughout the season. The biggest obviously being the Ascot Gold Cup at Royal Ascot in June. The first kind of major one of these is the Yorkshire Cup, which is a Group 2 race over 2 miles. Duncan, who is going to win this race?
Yeah, cheers, mate. I mean, it's not the best. I nearly took it out from one of the things to kind of the races to look at because it only has a few runners in there. I think there's 5 that go to post currently. I really, really hope that it doesn't drop down to 4 because that would be painful because then it just becomes a win-only bet. At 5, you still have 2 places. So I'm going to take on the favourite and go with Continuous, who's currently 13-2 for that man again, Aidan O'Brien and Ryan Moore. Proven both at the course, having won the Voltigeur back in 2023. And then went on to win the St Leger over today's trip, so 1 mile 6 furlongs. So clearly the stamina is not an issue for this horse. Wasn't seen to the best effect, I don't think, like so far this season or last season. Latest run, he finished 9th over 2 miles in the Dubai Gold Cup, so not a small race or anything like that. But I was reading the comments afterwards, and the jockey said that just apparently the way the race kind of panned out, just did not enjoy the slow pace, and then obviously then a sprint finish is just not what the horse is about really. I think if this horse can kind of, if they decide, to put the horse out, if they don't see there's much pace on, make it a stamina test and kind of go for it from the front really, and really put the screws in, because while Rebels Romance, who's the current favourite at 2-1 for Godolphin, is clearly a fantastic horse. Prize money wise, has won over £10 million so far in the career. Nothing to be scorned at there. I just worry that the trip is going to be an issue. It's 1 over 1 mile 4, so 2 furlongs less than what they're going to be racing over, or 2.5 furlongs over what they're going to be racing over on Friday. But both times I've kind of read the comments again about the horse. They've won by just a head, and it's kind of being picked. So I don't know whether or not the stamina is going to be an issue with this, especially on fast ground. That would be my concern with Rebels Romance. Could go in and absolutely hose in, but with 2 places, I'd be willing to kind of take on the favourite and give Continuous a go at the prices.
Okay, yeah, made a good case for Continuous there. I'm similar to you, and I was quite keen to take on the favourite. You're right, it's a disappointing turnout, only 5 runners, and thank you for correcting me, it is over 1 mile 6. It's the Doncaster Cup that's over 2 miles. We usually write the distances in here, and I just took a punt that it was 2 miles.
Sorry, that's my bad. I just didn't do that.
I should know.
My bad.
Should know. How York hasn't got a 2 mile race, I don't know. When it's really big enough.
Shocking.
But, anyway, I agree. It's a mad race because there's only 5 runners. 3 of the horses are coming back from trips to Meydan in Dubai, and the other 2 haven't run this season. So you're taking an absolute swing on who's primed and ready for this sort of race. And this is a sort of tee up for the Ascot Gold Cup, which will be a lot of these main targets. So at 11-8, I was quite keen to take on the Fab. I'm taking a chance, dare I say, with Sweet William, but he is the second favourite at 7-4. And he is a bit of an older horse now, so he's not necessarily got any improvement in him. But he ran in all the big kind of cup races last year. 3rd in the Ascot Gold Cup, 2nd in the Goodwood Cup, both Group 1s, and he banged into Kyprios, who's the out-and-out best horse in this division. But then he sort of dropped in class slightly and won the Doncaster Cup pretty comfortably towards the end of last season. There's obviously nothing of Kyprios's kind of standing in here. The only slight concern, as I say, is his first start of the season. But if John Gosden's got him, fit enough, I think if he produces kind of his best form, he could run well. It's not a great price at 7-4, but it's not. To be honest, it's not a race I would really have a bet in. But if you're desperate to have a bet in it, I would probably give you Sweet William at a push.
I think the good thing with Sweet William is as well, like it seems to be like one of those hardy horses that always kind of gives his best regardless. So yeah, I think definitely got a good chance, like you say, if he's fit enough.
Absolutely right. We'll come on to the final race that we're going to preview. This is the big feature race on Saturday. As I say, it's the first Group 1 for the kind of older generation of horses. Before we get into the latter half of the season where the 2 generations start to clash. So it is the Lockinge Stakes over a mile at Newbury, and yeah, it's a real good race. It's thrown up some good winners over the years. Slight caveat is that we haven't got the final field, but with it being a Group 1, usually fairly confident who's going to run at this stage. So Duncan, who wins the Lockinge?
Well, I was actually going to pass it over to you because I feel like I've piggybacked in off you on a few of these. So I thought I'd let you, because again, we've kind of picked out the same one. So I'd rather if you go through your selections, as I think it's unfair for me to put mine up all the time first. So you go.
Yeah, to be honest, I've just scrolled down and seen that you've gone with what I've gone with, which always fills me with confidence when your mates are on the same horse. I think I would start off by just quickly talking about the Fav. So Rosalian, kind of before I properly looked at this race, just had it in my head I was going to tip him because he was a really good horse last season. He was only just touched off in the 2000 Guineas. Then he won the Irish version. Then he won at Royal Ascot in the St James's Palace Stakes, a couple of big Group 1s under his belt, and unfortunately he had a bit of an injury setback and missed the rest of the season, and that's why he's only kind of making his next start here. And I was listening to Richard Hannon being interviewed recently, and he was absolutely raving about him and how well he's developed over the sort of winter into this year, and how much he's strengthened and how good he looks, and he's definitely the apple of his eye. And I was thinking, Rosalian will be primed to run a big race here, but he is fairly skinny at the top of the market. And when I looked down, I know Dancing Gemini was running, and I thought, let me just remind myself of this horse, because he's trained by Roger Till, who, let's be honest, isn't the sexiest, well, certainly not the sexiest looking man you've ever seen, but certainly not the sexiest trainer that anyone's bet on in this sport. But that doesn't mean he can't train a good horse, and he's had a few decent horses over this time. And I think when a horse like him doesn't quite do it as a 3-year-old, people immediately dismiss them when they become 4-year-olds. But as we spoke about a few weeks ago, horses are still developing. Some horses will come to their best at 4 and 5 on the flat. It's not typical because they're trained to produce at 2 and 3. But some horses just need that extra bit of time, and he has come back this season looking better than ever. And to be honest, they tried to make him into a Derby horse last season, and that clearly didn't work. He's clearly a speedy miler, and he didn't really beat much at Doncaster in the Doncaster Mile on his first start of the season, but was pretty impressive that day. But it was what he did at Sandown that really took my eye. Yeah. He was absolutely swinging on the bridle, and it was a Group 2 race over a mile, and he just cruised clear, didn't he? I mean, he could have won by any distance if he'd been asked. He won so comfortably, and it just really pricked my ears up and sort of made me take notice to think this is a horse we shouldn't be dismissing lightly. And if I had my last 20 quid, I'd much rather have him on this horse at 3-1 than 100%. Rosalian, where you're taking a chance on fitness. They might be using it as a stepping stone to Royal Ascot and all that sort of stuff. So I really like the favourite, but Dancing Gemini is the one for me. He's in the prime of his life. He's fit and healthy. He'll take my money, I think. Well, he's already has taken my money. I've already bet on him.
It's interesting though that because obviously Ross Orion rode at Sandown, but doesn't have the ride here. So I don't know where Ross is going for the weekends, but obviously Ryan Moore takes the ride.
Yeah, and
no downgrade.
Well, he was actually interviewed about this recently, Roger Till, because Kieran Schumacher's also ridden him. So I was kind of thinking, maybe he's lost the ride as well, but. Basically, he was offered Ryan Moore, and he just said it's so hard. How can you turn down Ryan Moore? He is the best British jockey that we have, so that's the reason why. So no discredit to Kieran Schumacher or Ross Ryan, but Ryan Moore is top trumps in this game.
Yeah, I was going to say, he gets the pick of what he likes. But yeah, no, I'm with you on... I know you've got an each way, though, as well, so I'll let you do the each way before I jump into...
No, what, have you got anything to add on Dancing Gemini?
No, I think you literally covered more than what I had in there. Like you say, I think 3-1 with Ryan Moore on board I think it's a very, very decent price. Like you said, Sandown in the Group 2 last time out of the Bet365 mile, just like ridiculous. And he finished, I think it was 1 3/4 lengths won by in the end, but say it could have been 2 3/4 if he wanted to. And just being a little bit fitter potentially than Rosalian. Don't get me wrong, Rosalian, is the dual top-rated horse at 122. But I'd rather, like you say, I'd rather have my money. Would I be more pissed off at Dancing Gemini losing at 3-1 or Rosalian losing at 7-4? I'd be more pissed off if I'd backed Rosalian at 7-4 with my money. So Dancing Gemini for me, 3-1.
Exactly. He could be the one on Saturday. And then I thought, given that there might be a smaller field than there is currently, we said last week when we were looking at one of the races at Lingfield that there were 8 entries, but the bookies were already only offering 2 places. In this race, with the current entry stage, they are offering 3 places. So if you did want an anti-post bet and the field does go to maybe 7, then it's a good chance to nick a bit of each way. Skullduggery, as I like to do now and again. And one, in a similar vein to Damasus that I tipped earlier, John Gosden has one in here that has just been completely discounted because of its run last time out. And that's Lead Artist. He was quite a progressive horse as a 3-year-old last season, won a couple of Group 3s without really kind of making the break into a Group 1 company, and he was quite fancy for the same race that Dancing Gemini won at Sandown, but he just sort of cut out like a light. And again, as I said before, it was a time when John Gosden's horses were underperforming. Now, if he was 10-1, I wouldn't be going near him, but he's 25-1, and I just think whenever I see things like that where a horse has had a bad run and there might be an excuse, or it's just one bad time that they haven't performed, the market sometimes massively overreacts. Sometimes they can come in too short and sometimes they can go out too big. And this is just a case of, if he turns up, he won't be 25 to 1. And if you can just forgive him that run, and basically there must have been some kind of physical excuse as to why if a horse runs his race and is beaten fair and square, then you know where you stand. But if a horse cuts out or pulls up over jumps or falls, you can just draw a line through it and say, well, if I take a linear view of his other form and just ignore the anomaly, then should he be 25 to 1? I don't think he should. And I think he's a bit of value each way.
Yeah. Ocean Murphy already booked.
Exactly, he's got the duck on it, so
yeah, not a bad one. Exactly, not a bad one. 25 to 1.
Yeah,
fill your boots.
Indeed. Okay, everyone, that is a wrap. Record 45 minutes time, I think.
Come on.
Not a bad job there. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Please do get involved on our socials. We are on Instagram, X, and indeed TikTok. And please do send through your questions. Let us know what you want to cover in future pods. Please look out for the one next week where we've got the great trainer Jack Morland on as our special guest. That is one not to miss. But in the meantime, have fun out there, race hard, and try not to be tailed off.
Cheers, guys.
Position. Any power at the last race down. Any power has gone, but in front of the last length, Melanie Light.
By the far side, they're running up towards the finish, and he's mistaken the winning post. He's mistaken the winning post completely, Roger Lockwood, and Hoytroy.
From Archibald, Hardy Eustace defends his title, but Archibald is flattened out in second. Then in third, and White Knight is beginning to come out. He's drifting off the tree line. He hits fire, and this was coming home. Going to win his fourth Betfair Chase, and quarter